Repression takes place near the beginning of Season 7, and opens with a shot that, frankly, looks like the bedroom of an obsessed teenage fan of this show. Between the Bajoran symbol and all the blueprints, we just need a little diorama of Playmates figures to finish it up. We soon see the guy who lives here.
Return to that dark place from which all life springs. The primal energy charges your blood, an energy of rebirth. The mind awakens and focuses on its task.
I wonder if the script just had spew random words out, because it's hard to imagine anyone deliberately wrote this in the script. I'm sure if you looked at the page, it's just blank with "wing it" written in there. My general rule about short teasers usually depends upon them containing things that actually make sense, so it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be a good episode. After the titles, we meet up with Tom and B'Elanna going to the holodeck to enjoy a 3D movie. As she notes, Tom went to a great deal of trouble to create a three-dimensional simulation showing a two-dimensional story that requires special glasses to see in 3 dimensions. And that's about as witty as Repression gets. One surprising thing, though, the film they're watching is Revenge of the Creature, the sequel to The Creature from the Black Lagoon, which is a Universal film as opposed to a Paramount one. Although maybe Paramount didn't make any old 3D films. I never looked it up. It's not important, just a bit surprising that they would pay for the rights to show another studio's clips on their show. Anyway, Tom and B'Elanna soon decide they want to be alone for what they plan to do in here. I think you might want to put a different kind of movie on for that. So they get rid of the audience, except one person is still there. Turns out it's Tabor from way back in Nothing Human. He was the Bajoran in that story, the one that was objecting to using that Cardassian medical data. He is completely out of it right here, and without explanation, although it is possible that he's overcome by shock at this example of continuity. There's just no medical explanation for what's happened to him, so Tuvok starts investigating to see if there might have been foul play, although Torres finds it hard to believe that anything bad could happen to Tabor.
When we were in the Maquis together, we used to joke that Tabor must have had his own personal force field. He went through a dozen firefights without even getting his clothes dirty.
Well, then it was really tempting fate to put on that gold shirt, wasn't it? There's a sign of minor skull trauma and something happened to his right shoulder, but none of that explains why he's in a coma. Of course, it already sounds like a Vulcan was involved, since those are the areas that they are known for grabbing when they do their special Vulcan stuff. Yet this never occurs to the Doctor or is mentioned. You might remember way back in Cathexis, another episode about an inexplicable coma, that it was revealed that the Vulcan nerve pinch leaves such a telltale and obvious sign that even a medical novice like Tom Paris was in that episode could still identify one. A story by Brannon Braga, no less. I bring that up because he was actually connected with this episode. The story was by Kenneth Biller. No surprise, since it's so poorly thought through. And the script was written up by one Mark Haskell Smith. Smith had started out by writing a play that got terrible reviews, and was soon tapped by Hollywood to do uncredited rewrites on scripts for movies that got terrible reviews. Anaconda is one such example of that. So, somebody sat down, watched Anaconda, and immediately afterward turned to their partner and said, "This guy is the one we need to fix that Kenneth Biller script." As you can imagine, this did not go well, and that's why Braga had to step in and do a rewrite of the guy known for his rewrites. And that was it for Smith and Star Trek. His connection is so small, he doesn't even have a Memory Alpha page. And they have one for Revenge of the Creature, which again is not even a Paramount picture. So I'm cutting Braga some slack on this one here. He was very likely operating under the gun, trying to fix something that was already broken beyond all repair. There's only so much you could do when you're short on time and have an idiot premise to work with. While investigating, Tuvok comes across someone we've never seen before, crewman Jor, going through Tabor's things. She's getting one of the many books that Tabor has because, as we've established, the Maquis packed every personal item they have into that teeny tiny little ship. It had all of Chakotay's Indian stuff in there, Tabor's library was in there, hell, I'll bet that Tora's antique furniture collection is probably in there too. Since we've never seen her before, she's naturally the number one suspect, and there is a sign that somebody's covering up something. The sensor logs are incomplete for the holodeck. Janeway thinks Tuvok is being a little paranoid, immediately concluding that some other member of the crew did this, and he admits he has a hunch that it was, which he knows isn't exactly logical, but he's convinced that it's the truth. Well, whoever it is, they soon strike again, this time in a Jeffries tube against another Maquis crew member. Guess no one mentioned that it was Maquis hunting season right now. He was on duty with crewman Jor also, which confirms Tuvok's suspicion that she's somehow involved. So he and Chakotay rush down to where she is right now to ask her what's going on. Well, she doesn't have any answers for them, mostly because she's been taken out as well and left in the darkened mess hall, which they leave dark because this scene needs some atmosphere, and while turning the lights on would make their jobs easier, atmosphere is more important. Janeway says that this doesn't make any sense. There's no reason to suddenly have a grudge against the Maquis, and Chakotay lets slip with a reference to your crew, that he quickly corrects to our crew, although it is understandable. He is responsible for them being here. He's responsible for integrating them into the Voyager crew. His subconscious desire to be protective of them isn't unreasonable. So perhaps he doesn't have to worry about being flogged later for the slip. He gathers all the Maquis, well, those who are conscious anyway, for a meeting to explain this, but a lot of them, including our old buddy Chell, are suspicious of Tuvok, despite Torres insisting that this difference is ancient history.
But the last thing we need right now is an outbreak of paranoia.
That's right. Don't act paranoid. Now, you are all to travel only in pairs and be armed at all times while being ever watchful for an attack by someone we know is out to get you. But, and I want to make this perfectly clear, don't be paranoid. Meanwhile, the first person with an actual lead is, naturally, Tom Paris, who devised a way to look at the person who attacked in the holodeck at the beginning of the episode, using a complex understanding of holographic systems as well as the physics of light scattering. It's just something he whipped up between his ace piloting job and heading to sickbay to try to cure the common coma. It's going to take some time to get more details on who this was, but at least we can approximate the height and weight of the attacker. Based upon that, Tuvok does a little bit more work and soon calls Harry in to interrogate him. He got a letter from his cousin, see, and since all of the attacks happened after the recent transmission from Earth, Tuvok naturally read everybody's mail. It's always amusing to me that, even though they so brazenly violate people's privacy, Federation security is still so incredibly awful. He suspects Harry might be seeking revenge because an old friend of his was killed by the Maquis.
Tuvok, it's me, Harry. Do you really think I'd be capable of this?
He makes a good point. Harry has never actually accomplished anything before. Why should we expect him to start now? Tuvok admits to being perplexed by this case, which is only compounded when Tabor wakes up on his own, and with no answers. This is getting more and more crazy. It's just waiting for somebody to get sloppy and lead to yet another tragedy. And it should surprise you that the brain donor responsible for that is Torres, who ditches Chell, forcing Chakotay to give him his partner and go off looking for her in the cargo bay. Sure enough, she's in a coma, and we quickly learn that Tuvok is the one responsible, especially as he attacks Chakotay and gives him a mind meld. As the investigation continues, it's clear that Tuvok doesn't remember what he did. He's investigating a crime that he himself is committing. Now that is a story idea with great potential. The problem is, as we've established, Voyager's where potential goes to die. Thanks to his meditation, Tuvok starts to see through the deception and concludes that he is the assailant. Although what helps confirm it is the image of that Bajoran guy from the beginning of the episode. Tuvok decides to back up his case that he is in fact responsible for these attacks by pulling a phaser and pointing it at Harry and Janeway. This is familiar territory for both of them, though. How many mutinies has there been for Janeway? And Harry? About 30% of the times that he's been shot has been by members of Voyager's crew. In fact, statistically speaking, Harry's about due to be shot by a member of the crew any day now. At Tuvok's suggestion, he's tossed in the brig, and the doctor looks him over while Janeway tries to get some answers. And that points towards a letter that he received from his son. But before revealing what she's found, she stops in to check on Chakotay, who has just woken up.
Apparently he's being manipulated by some form of mind control. Can he leave, Mr. Paris?
I don't see why not. But he should wear one of these.
I don't know why. The doctor just insists I give out these neck thingies. Embedded in the letter is another letter from that Bajoran guy. Chakotay recognizes him. This guy was thrown out of the Maquis for his extreme ideas, which included the use of mind control. Sure enough, he kidnapped Tuvok, mind-dicked him, and the signal was, I guess, to Manchurian Candidate him awake to finish his mission. Janeway tries to help, so as you can imagine, this backfires horribly, and Tuvok uses his comm badge to send a message to those Maquis that he had mind-melded with to set their dip switches to evil.
Good to see you, Commander.
It's good to be back.
I knew it, he was just way overdue. The only surprise is that he didn't get it in the face or in the junk. All too quickly, the Maquis take over Voyager.
We're 35,000 light years from Earth, Chakotay. No one out here even knows about the Maquis. It doesn't make sense. There's nothing you can accomplish.
Yes, thank you for pointing out but one of many plot holes here. This is a Kenneth Biller story, so it is absolutely no surprise that its foundation is complete idiocy. Let's follow the trail of events here, shall we? The Maquis are utterly wiped out. The Treaty of Peace between Cardassia and the Federation was broken the moment that Cardassians declared war on them, which means the entire cause that the Maquis was fighting for has now been rendered moot. You can't very well have a demilitarized zone when it's full of fucking warships blowing each other up, right? That war eventually came to an end, resulting in a Cardassia that was so thoroughly crippled that they couldn't clear away the rubble because all the rubble was on fire. So, with no DMZ to fight over, with no Maquis that need reinforcements, with the Cardassians reduced from the third-rate player that they had been before all this to a broken people whose leaders are all dead, this Bajoran suddenly decides that he needs a new Maquis army for no reason whatsoever. And not just any old army, one that is on the other side of the galaxy, and thus capable of accomplishing jack and shit here. For this incomprehensible reason, he pulls out of his magic hat the brainwashing that he had done on Tuvok, and with a brief message, he has apparently instructed Tuvok to mind control the Maquis back to their old selves again. Obviously, that's exactly the kind of concern he would have had when he programmed Tuvok in the first place, so that he could give him a simple message to make him do that, because after all, you never know when a bunch of Maquis might wind up stranded on the other side of the galaxy. It's important to have a contingency plan in place for that. So, he discovers when Tuvok is going to get a letter from his son, manages to defeat Starfleet security at the Pathfinder project on Earth, and encodes a secret transmission within Tuvok's own letter that goes completely undetected. Now granted, this is Starfleet security we're talking about here, so the bar there is pretty fucking low. Tuvok's brainwashing is activated, and suddenly, he's not capable of using mind melds to mind control people himself. After all, it wasn't as if this was suddenly reminding him of their duties, remember? Torres is actively plotting against the husband that she married a week ago. Don't tell me that his leaving the toilet seat up has pissed her off that much as she wants to abandon him on a barren planet already. At 1 week, you haven't even reached the farting in front of each other stage yet in a marriage. So, I give you all a Kenneth Biller tale. A pointless plan involving implausible lengths to formulate an unprecedented plot to further an unneeded cause in the name of defeating an adversary that's already vanquished with a group that can't help anyway. That's not just stupid, it's impressively stupid. Like cutting your own foot off because you can't find the toenail clippers and all you have is a hacksaw. This story only makes sense if you assume that this Bajoran guy is the shittiest Batman in the universe, and so thoroughly mind-controlled Tuvok that he can play a game of tag with it. And keep in mind, this is the guy they put in charge of the show for Season 7 of Voyager. I'm starting to believe Rick Berman had some kind of springtime for Hitler plot going on behind the scenes of the show. Alright, let's wrap this up. To test Tuvok's loyalty, Chakotay, and if you needed any more of a sign that he was mind-controlled, Chakotay actually has energy and emotion, so you know he's not himself. Chakotay gives him a phaser and tells him to shoot Janeway, but now we're talking about Bajoran brainwashing versus her brainwashing, and I think we know who's better at that. Tuvok tries shooting her, but the phaser is unpowered. He doesn't need to actually kill anybody to prove anything to Chakotay, just that he would be willing to. But he knew that he wouldn't be given an armed weapon, so the moment that Janeway's gone, Tuvok grabs Chakotay and reverses it, and soon after they go through the ship and set everybody back to good again. so we can finish up watching old 3D movies. The end. The post-episode follow-up. Stupid Neelix's moment is him offering popcorn in the theater because I am certain he has put something hideous on top of it all. By season 7, that is a guarantee. Final score for Repression is 3 out of 10. A few moments that suggest a competent mystery are thoroughly undone by the rest of the episode. At the center of a successful mystery is intelligence. You cannot have a "don't think about it so much" excuse for a frickin' detective story. It's like telling people they can only appreciate an ugly painting by listening to it. You have missed the entire point. And don't give me, "well, that Bajoran was unstable" excuse. You can't make your villain hyper-competent and then explain away everything else that he does with, "and he's also fucked in the head." It's no better than that alien that messes with their minds for no reason whatsoever. If you're going to go to all the trouble to tell us this, how about inventing a reason for it? A motive is not too much to ask. And no, I'm not going to create one. I could work all of this stuff out if I wanted to. I'm not going to. You know why? It's not my job watching the show to fix all the screw-ups. How about if we do it at the script phase or the filming phase rather than after it's already been broadcast? Look, what this episode needed was to focus on the Tuvok investigation. It needed to find a way to make that work, because it was such a good start there. What makes this episode so frustrating is the fact that it goes downhill so fast. The solution to the mystery is just the most unbelievable ass pull that I can recall in some time. Ditch the Maquis stuff, or make it a two-parter. But frankly, I wouldn't even bother. But if you did, at least you would have time to, A, flesh out a motive for the villain instead of just telling me, "oh, he's bonkers," and 2, that you could properly build up a sense of Maquis Starfleet conflict. Something to show this growing rift so that when the time comes for them to turn on each other, that there would be a believable reason behind it. Vulcans suddenly having the ability to turn you evil just does not work.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
I'm afraid.